And we're in the middle sometimes on these, not directly, but the cost, right? What your hourly rate is, all of the consumables, all of the cost of the tools you use. And when someone says, hey, I'm going to charge my client for analytics, like for software, for the gig, by the click, by whatever, our tendency is like, that's tough, because it's sort of telling the client, do you want to use technology or do you want to do it this way? Choose what is right here, when the client's like, wait a minute, I just need the value to be provided, and I need a good outcome, and I need it fast and efficient, and all of these things. And so, it's interesting, licensing models, hardware costs, all of that end up factoring into that, because at the end of the day, people want fixed, right? We want a guaranteed certainty on cost, or some kind of budget certainty in the middle of it.
Well, it handcuffs the practitioner as well. So you've got the project manager that's front lines. They're talking to the law firm. They're talking to the client. They know they have all this technology in their back pocket, but then there's a paywall that they hit. And they're like, I could do this. That's where you build the
narrative, though, about what the total cost of doing business. I mean, what I've always moved away from is that, line item spreadsheet, compare, really going down to the assumptions, going down to the historicals. How long did it take with the person? What was the past outcome on the last several cases? Is there a unique data source? And really trying to build the narrative around, okay, it'll be $10,000 to use this analytic, but it's going to save you $35,000 bare minimum. And we've seen it save as much as $80,000. And it's going to get you actionable information so that you can start talking pre-meet and confer, and you can validate your search terms, and you can validate your custodians because you've done social network analysis. So there's ways to, because I struggled with whether or not to have that paywall, and there's ways to, I think, demonstrate the value, because I also found when I had no cost affiliated, people didn't increase their adoption rates.
Right.
Having investment in it made people use the tool more effectively, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Having your skin in the game, suddenly people are going to go through the process of really making sure it's threaded right and validating and using some of the other bells and whistles. And I wasn't seeing that when it was just, here you go.
And just making them aware of that workflow too, right? Making aware that there is a decision point here, and we're choosing to do it this way for a reason, and here's the cost benefit. Because the next time this comes around, they're going to say, I want to do that again. If they weren't involved in that, they really don't know what you did, and you're back to selling the whole argument again.
Well, and otherwise, I think there's a perception of it's the easy button, and it's very simple what we do. And I think you are sort of hitting on that. Like, we are not dealing with just gigs in, gigs out. We're dealing with very atypical data sources. We're doing PII, post-breach investigation and notification. We're doing InfoGov validate. I mean, it's very broad what now falls under our umbrella, and so it, I think, helps demonstrate value and sort of show the extra steps we're going to in some respects.
And I think you were pointing out how commonplace it is to do predictive coding in TAR, and that's true. I do think it's scary that the people behind the wheel of that sometimes, because you sit in a demo here at Legal Tech and it looks pretty turnkey. But everywhere else in the world where you apply machine learning, a PhD runs that. Like you don't run like cancer screening through predictive coding with just like some guy that went to a demo at a trade show. It's a data scientist is running that, and there's a team, and it's getting like peer reviewed, and there's this whole process. And I feel like we rely on the technology a lot in this market, but very few are actually putting the right expertise out there, and that can actually explain it. Like, why did you move the needle on recall and precision, and like what was the outcome, and what difference did that make when you did that?
Right.
And you were saying like people didn't understand it. Maybe now they understand it, but they still don't really know what it means. Like they don't know what changes to the algorithm.
It's half as many documents if I do 97 versus 98. Let's just do that.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's a high bar for the software providers because they have to make it like usable at a level where it's not data scientists. It's essentially volunteers sometimes that are doing it, right? Like whoever drew the short straw. That's a tall order, and I think that's one of the reasons that AI in the discovery market has been so long to adopt. Is it just?
I think philosophically too, it's changed over the years too, because there was a black box mentality that said, just trust us. All our little algorithms are running and it's working. Just trust us.
Yeah. It was fostered sort of as the perception.
Yeah. And we've tried to not do that. We want exposure of everything. There's no secrets. We want to show you if it's a 47-term query that we're doing in the background, we want that pushed to the screen so you know what the query is.
But if you push too much of that, then you start confusing people, and
we hide the buttons a little bit.
like they just want a speedometer. I've heard people just say these ridiculous things. I just want one graph that tells me when to stop, and I'm like, this is a complicated thing here. Sorry, we can't reduce it to a.
It's that education gap, because it's not just something we're seeing as folks come in as baby attorneys. It's actually where it's more challenging as someone who's proven a bit of a rainmaker, maybe a junior partner, but who really didn't, dig into these different tools. There's almost an aversion to it, but they still want to use the new sexy tools, and then it gets pushed down to a very junior person who doesn't know anything. So there's a lot of upskilling, I think, that needs to be done, because people are afraid to explain what they did to a judge and explain it wrong, but they also don't feel like educating themselves. So it's a balancing act.